My name is Laurel Canan, and I'm president of a boutique booking agency named Center Productions. And I have a part-time associate that I've brought on with me, and it's just the two of us. And we work the national market together.
But how many artists do you have?
I have 12 artists on our roster.
Right.
We have three ensemble acts, but primarily solo artists, Broadway based.
And were you always an agent or a manager?
No, interestingly, I was a presenter for a number of years. I worked with a community concert association part-time, and then when we saw the dream of a performing arts center finally come to reality, I became the executive director of the theater and managed that facility until job circumstances took us out of the area, and I went to the agency side of the business to stay involved, and I wanted to have the flexibility to be able to go different places as needed with my husband's employment.
If you were thinking that you might want to be an agent, would you recommend that perhaps someone spend a year or two or some period of time actually working as a presenter and then consider becoming an agent?
That's a great question. I think what I bring to the table as a former presenter, now working on the agent side of the business, I understand tech writers. I understand what the venues need to put on a performance, what needs to go on backstage, marketing, and just what we can do to facilitate a great program for the audience. I've been there, I've done that, and a lot of our presenter clients look to me for that expertise, especially the newer ones. So an internship or even a part-time position, maybe working in the box office or really anywhere in the theater I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. You never know what you'll pick up.
And are there ever agents that go the other direction and become presenters?
That I don't know of very many that have done that. I do know that there have been presenters that have tried to come over to the agency side of the business, and it hasn't worked for a number of reasons. I tend to look, people have asked me how I've been able to do it. I look at, because I was a fundraiser for my theater, I look at my role with our presenters as it's almost like fundraising. It's all about building the relationships and follow through, and I understand that dynamic, having been a fundraiser and ran the capital campaign for the theater. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I've been able to transition and do it.
I can understand. You solve problems, you get creative, and you make things happen.
Right.
We hear a lot here about relationship. So what sorts of things, what's the relationship building that occurs prior to having the first engagement with the presenter and working together? What should one be doing in advance of that level of relationship?
That's a great question. Professional fundraisers will tell and counsel that it takes up 5 to 7 contacts before the donation comes through. because that relationship is being built. There's a trust factor that needs to be established, and understanding the needs of the organization they're being asked to give to. I look at coming on the presenting side with the agency. There's that courting relationship that takes place. It's the very rare presenter that will book on a first time visit with an agent, or the very first time that they've seen an artist on stage. And it's developing the relationship and a trust factor where a presenter will know that Agency X has a great roster, and they hear good things about the agency and what they're like to work with, and that the relationship is established. And it's a lot of continued communication, phone calls, just calling to say, how are you? If there's something going on in a personal life, or there's a grandchild on the way, I love to establish the human connection relationship, and call that call and ask how's the baby, or I know that you've had an illness, how are you doing? And just put a human touch on it rather than a business relationship.
And once you have that initial relationship running, and the both of you start to seriously discuss the possibility of one of your artists performing there, how far in advance are most presenters looking to bring in talent?
Most of the presenters we work with are looking at 9 to 18 months in advance, based on their artistic season, how the puzzle of putting together a season with all of the different artists they're looking at, how everything comes together, and the flow of the potential season they're looking at. It's 9 to 18 months. Once in a great while, I will get a call from a presenter that we've worked with where they've had a contract not come through at the last minute, or something happens, and we'll get a call. Hi, is so-and-so available a month from today? So there is that rare occasion.
But shouldn't count on it happening.
Don't count on it happening. No. But usually it's 9 to 18 months.
And you suggest to your artists that they showcase either independent showcases or juried showcases, or both, or neither?
I usually, especially for an artist that we're trying to build name recognition for and introduce them to the performing arts market, I always recommend applying for a juried showcase. If that doesn't work, if they're not selected, I always recommend an independent showcase. It's the best way for a presenter to be able to see that artist on stage.
For someone who hasn't been here before to any of these conferences, we've had a nice array of presenters. We've had a nice array of artists and agents. But could you maybe just summarize for us, generality, what kinds of presenters are most likely to be here, and about how many of them?
I understand from statistics I heard actually this morning, there's 190 presenting organizations here, give or take. The majority of the presenters that are here are probably 500 seat to 1,000 seat venues with budgets for artist fees anywhere from maybe $3,000 to $15,000 per act or artist fee. I think that's probably a fair summation.
And I had a question for you.
There's also a lot of organizations here that are from the Concert Association model, where they're completely volunteer driven and run organizations that are here to look for 3 or 4, maybe 5 shows to offer on a series in their communities.
I understand that you served as the chair of one of the regional conferences recently. Can you give folks a sense of how this comes about? Obviously, it didn't happen on a whim. How far ahead were you working on this event when you chaired it, and what sorts of committees and things have to be brought together to make it all happen?
Great question. My co-chair and I, John Hassig, who was at the Marcus Center in Milwaukee, he and I were approached nearly a year in advance to co-chair the conference. I understand that we each went through a vetting process, and they finally happened for me. I guess my name has come up several times, but we were actually contacted in November, and they began working on next year's conference usually within a month of the finish of the conference. So we finished 2 weeks ago. Surveys have already gone out, and I know that they're in process now of vetting co-chairs for next year in Columbus. In December, we all met in Milwaukee and did a site visit of 3-day site visit of the locations for the spotlight showcases. We had a long visit at the theater there, visits at the hotel, visits at the convention center, and other sites being considered around Milwaukee for some of the conference events. And we also participated on the professional development committee. Those took place, meetings, everything was done via phone, which made it nice for me. We were on conference call beginning probably right after APAP, the end of January, every 2 weeks until literally the week before the conference. We went over potential keynote speakers or programs that the conference committee was interested in looking at. We worked with the local arts groups as part of the consortium of the local and state presenting organizations to listen to their ideas, and it was an incredible experience. But they're very deep right now into planning for it literally a year from now.
So really many, if not perhaps most, of the events at these conferences and the topics are surfacing right from the members in the profession.
Yes.
And meeting needs and interests.
Yes.
That the members feel would be beneficial.
I know I can speak to how Arts Midwest solicits. They ask for proposals for sessions or different workshops, panel discussions that people in our field can submit. And that goes through a fairly heavy vetting process. and a committee, I think there were 15 of us, that looked at, we were given a summation of all of the proposals, and we went through a long vetting process, actually selecting what we thought as a committee that our peers and colleagues would find interesting or of good information gathering source for them.
I've served on both the juried showcase committees for Arts Midwest and PAE. There are a few slight differences in the process, but it's quite similar. And you may have served on one of those at some point yourself.
I have not served on a showcase, the showcase selection. And this year, specifically as co-chair and as an agent, I requested to be removed from the process. So I had no idea who had even applied or how the selection process took place. I wanted to completely recuse myself from that.
But then the jury showcases, the ones that are then presented at the conference, again, those are by application on the part of the artist and
yes,
then evaluation by members of the field who then invite the ones they feel would be most interesting for whatever reason to then come, and that's why it's called the jury show?
Yes. My understanding was there were over 230 applications at Arts Midwest for 16 spaces. One of the other regionals, I understand there were roughly 190 to 200 applications for 7 spaces. So it's highly competitive, and I think the different genres and what they actually, the committee has selected as showcase, I think it works well together. And usually it's that part of discovery. When I was a presenter, I always enjoyed seeing the juried showcases, just because of that element of surprise and discovery.
And is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I always advise and recommend take every opportunity to do the continuing education sessions at these conferences. Even though I'm not a presenter anymore, I still get asked a lot of questions by new presenters coming into the field, and I like to stay current on issues or new technology that's especially with social media presence and marketing and trends. Have to stay current.
Contracts and legal issues as well?
Yes, contracts and legal issues. It's always good to have a refresher. I always come away from at least one session with a new idea or something that I need to rethink in my business model.
Wonderful.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.